Maura Carley here again today to talk to you about the rules of your plan, which sounds very unpleasant, and it can be, because if you don't follow the rules of your plan, you're giving your insurer the ability to deny your claim, which is most unfortunate since coverage is so expensive. Whether you're paying for it or your employer, you want it to be paying your claims. So let's go over the main categories that everyone should know. Does your plan require you to have a primary care physician, referred to as a PCP? Does your plan require you to get a referral to see a specialist? We are also going to review the whole area of prior authorization. And if you have out-of-network benefits, you need to know about the claims filing deadline. Although they're not rules of the plan technically, when I discuss this with my staff, they urged me to throw in a couple of other perils, so we'll do that. Let the buyer beware. But let's go back to the top of the list. PCP, primary care physician. That tends to be a requirement of the plans that are more restrictive. You may remember the term gatekeeper. It's an unpleasant term, but it fits the bill. That PCP is the gatekeeper who is your entree into the whole system. And when you have that kind of plan, you should get on it right away to find a PCP. The PCP you want may not be taking new patients. The PCP you get may not have open appointments, so it's something you need to move on. Now, a referral requirement is when a referral from the PCP is required to see a specialist. And there are probably plans out there that may not require a PCP, but still have a referral requirement, so be aware of that. I keep trying to mention that there's an exception to almost every rule. But if you go to see a specialist when you don't have a referral and your plan requires it, again, you're inviting your insurance company to deny the claim. Let's move on to prior authorization. Prior authorization tends to be required for expensive prescription medications or an admission or an expensive procedure of some sort. If you're in-network, it is the responsibility of the in-network providers to obtain prior auth, but I would not leave that to chance, because we've seen enough examples of total ineptness, and you're the victim of this. Your procedure may very well get canceled if the provider scheduled it and you thought it was on, but they neglected to get prior authorization from your insurer. And I've been asked many times, can you get prior authorization retroactively? And clearly that's a contradiction in terms, but it's not where you want to be. So leave nothing to chance. Leave nothing to chance. Moving on to those who have an out-of-network benefit. Some out-of-network providers will submit claims to your insurer, but they have no obligation to do so. Only in-network providers do. And whether or not out-of-network providers will do that for you is just very, very random. So many people have to submit all of those claims directly to the insurer themselves. And there's always a deadline. It can be 6 months. You would need to find out what it is, because again, if you submit a claim 2 years after the claims filing deadline, and let me say that sometimes the claims filing deadlines are too short. I mean, one should have at least 6 months to file claims, but you have people who just hang on to these things. Don't do that. Know what your claims filing deadline and get the claims in. Now, another rule, which is very typical, but just not all that common, is if you end up being admitted to a hospital, and usually on an urgent or emergent basis, somewhere in the rules of your plan is a requirement that the insurer be notified, often within 48 hours, and often, because of your circumstance, you're in no condition to do that. So it's a good idea. It's really a good idea to have it, unless you have a service like ours, where we're authorized to call on behalf of our clients, their insurers, and other parties. Get some trusted family member to be authorized who can act on your behalf, and have that on file with your insurer. That's just a good practice. Hello, Maura Carley back on a different day to tape a different ending to my video on rules at the recommendation of my staff, who always want to take good care of everyone. Two things. It's not really a rule of the plan, and I've mentioned it before, but more of just a request that you understand the network when you're moving from one source of coverage to another. Remember, networks can be regional, networks can be state-based, networks can be national. So this is something you must know. You must know. And the other issue, it doesn't come up all that often, but just know that somewhere in your plan documents, there's typically language that says, we reserve the right to pay claims based on the medical record of the service in question. And that makes good sense. I mean, you can't go to the emergency room for something that you should just wash off and put a Band-Aid on. I mean, I think we can agree to that. But it comes up when the consumer's clinical knowledge couldn't possibly match what a actual clinician would understand. So that is something you should just be aware of. No one should ever postpone care or not seek care because they believe it's an emergency. But just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. And I think that's it for today. Thank you so much.